In today's video, we have a variety of NHL trade rumors to take a look at, including the possibility of Patrick Kane ending up in Pittsburgh by the end of the season. The Vancouver Canucks are reportedly linked to defenseman John Klingberg as a potential deal later in the season. We also have some trade talk around Columbus and Colorado, news from the NHL waiver wire, some demotions, call-ups, injuries, and waivers. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to take a look at today. First up, a quick item from the NHL waiver wire. Yesterday, we had the Minnesota Wild defenseman Andrei Schuster on waivers. He, in fact, did clear. No claims were made, so he can be demoted to the American Hockey League, and we don't have any new players on waivers today. As far as some call-ups and demotions go, the Vancouver Canucks made an interesting move. Earlier demoting forward Nils Höglander to the American Hockey League and calling up defenseman Noah Juulsen. This is more of a paper transaction, according to Bruce Boudreau, head coach of the Canucks. Essentially, they needed a D-man, and to be able to bring anybody up, they had to send somebody down. So Höglander likely won't actually report to the AHL. I mean, he might, but it's possible he could stay in Vancouver. And then once Juulsen gets sent back, be re-brought back to the NHL roster. So we'll see. Interesting. I know there's been some debate about forward usage, a few players being healthy scratched here recently as the Canucks struggle, and Bruce Boudreau is trying to shake things up and find some answers and get on the winning side of the game. The Toronto Maple Leafs made some interesting roster adjustments as well ahead of tonight's tilt with the Winnipeg Jets. They called up Kyle Clifford, and they're bringing back Wayne Simmons, who was already recently called up, and both players are going to be in the lineup. Nicolas Aube-Kubel and Pierre Engvall are going to be the healthy scratches tonight. I know Keith mentioned for Engvall that he's obviously missed a lot of training camp with injury. Just needs a bit of a, take a step back, reset, maybe watch a game or two and get back in. Hopefully he can get things going here on track. Aube-Kubel, I think they want to see a little bit more from him. But obviously I guess some fans are saying, which kind of does make sense, they want to put in Simmons and Clifford because the Jets are a bigger, heavier team. So they want a little bit more physicality. But Aube-Kubel is certainly one of their leading guys with most hits, but like I said, it looks like they want to see more than just the physicality out of him, but which I understand, but I thought maybe they might wait another game before they make that adjustment. So interesting to see. We know Simmons has been mentioned in the rumor mill that there may not be a long-term fit with the Leafs any longer. So at the same time, in order for the Maple Leafs to have any chance to trade him, if they're going to do that, which they may not, then he needs to be able to play, and teams need to be able to see what he's capable of as well. I can see putting him in, but him and Clifford both seems a little odd to me, but I guess we'll see. They certainly have lots of firepower up front. They certainly won't suffer offensively at all. Just a matter of defensively and physically. We'll see how things go in this Canadian battle here this evening. The Seattle Kraken have called up goaltender Joey Daccord from their AHL affiliate. Philip Grubauer, of course, starting goaltender in Seattle, left the last game due to injury when they were playing the Colorado Avalanche. So Daccord will definitely get a chance to back up. Not sure if they'll start him or not. We'll have to see where things go in that front. Marty Jones might get the start. Not quite sure as of yet. Josh Norris left today's game with the Ottawa Senators against the Arizona Coyotes. Great game for the Sens again with a big 6-2 home victory. Their third straight on his 5-game homestand. But unfortunately losing Norris to injury. It looked like a nothing play where he essentially went down on a face-off and left holding, you could tell his left shoulder was kind of limp, and he could tell how frustrated he was slamming his stick down the hall after he left. It looks eerily similar, unfortunately, to what happened to Shane Pinto last year. In case you're not overly familiar, Shane Pinto right now having a terrific start to his rookie season, but he really should have been a rookie last year, but only a handful of games into the season. He took a similar type of play and ended up being out all season. I guess they obviously already had a previous shoulder issue with both of these guys. So we'll see what the update is on Norris. Hopefully he's not out too long. Should create an opportunity for Derek Brassard to likely get into the lineup and play, but I would suspect that it doesn't look good for Norris. Hopefully he's not out too long, though, so we'll have to wait for further info there. Jacob Chychrun in Arizona, of course, where they were visiting the Senators today. They talked about this a lot in the TSN intermission. Essentially, where the Sens have been linked to that player for quite some time, but of course we know the player himself, regardless if he ends up in Ottawa or anywhere, clearly he needs to get healthy and be able to play before likely a trade will materialize. We know the asking price is super high, but it looks like it's going to be quite a while yet before Chychrun can get on the ice. The last update we had was that hopefully in the next week to 10 days, he would be able to get into game action. He joined the team back mid last week when they were in Montreal. He's been traveling with the team, went to a few practices, but he's having trouble with battle drills, and apparently he went to go see his doctor, which is based out of New York, for a follow-up, and it wasn't a good update. He didn't get good news on how things were healing, so certainly that's problematic. So clearly we're probably looking at a more realistic timeline of probably another month before this guy can play, and that's assuming if everything, they came up with a new plan here to kind of get him back on track, to get everything healed up and ready to go. So I would suspect, or I wouldn't be surprised if we're at least into December before we see a Chychrun trade. It could drag out longer, who knows, but that's the reason why he hasn't been on the ice yet, and likely, of course, a big part of the reason why a deal has been delayed thus far. Now on to some trade rumors around the NHL. Some talk about the Colorado Avalanche, of course, the defending Stanley Cup champions, as we know, should have a pretty decent regular season and be one of the teams once again in the playoffs, in the mix, trying to defend their championship, going for a second straight cup. Of course, one player that they could look to as a potential piece to make a big move here at the deadline might be a young player like Martin Kaut, who unfortunately is a fairly high pick, and yet again in training camp got cut and didn't make the team. He's been in their system now for quite some time, has had some really good results at the AHL, but hasn't been able to put it together to stick in the NHL. He was recently called up, has played a few games, but still hasn't had a whole lot of production, and it's hard to say that he's going to be able to stick this time around as well. Of course, the Avalanche, big area I think that they'll look to upgrade, but of course that's going to depend on how the things go. Might be that number 2 center spot, but a lot of that's going to depend on Alex Newhook. Alex Newhook's been given a big opportunity, of course, with an opportunity to step up and replace Nazem Kadri in that spot, and he's certainly a young, very talented player, but is he ready for that role? We'll find out. And if the Avalanche feel like they could use an upgrade ahead of the playoffs, that's most likely the area that they do target. I mean, of course, they could target a top 6 winger and move a player like Landeskog or Rantanen to center. Landeskog did play some center in the playoffs last year when Kadri was out, so that wouldn't be shocking. Of course, Landeskog himself is out injured right now, will be out for a few months, but assuming he's back and healthy and able to go in the playoffs, they're a team that's been linked to a few different options here, and if the number 2 center spot, it's difficult to find the right player, depending on asking prices and all that. Maybe they go in a different direction, but either way, regardless of what they do, it seems likely that Kaut could be a player that they are able to move to get a fresh start so he can get more of an opportunity, and they can try to find upgrades ahead of the playoffs. It's also been reported that the Columbus Blue Jackets are looking for help on the blue line, preferably someone to play on the right side. And a lot of it's because of the fact that they haven't been pleased with Adam Boqvist to start the season. He was given the top pair slot, playing a lot with Zach Werenski, and just hasn't worked out. He's been a healthy scratch now for a couple of games. They elevated Nick Blankenberg, who's actually done a decent job up there. But the question around Blankenberg, is it too much too soon for the young defender who was just a college signing at the end of last season? So he doesn't have a ton of experience. The Jackets are going to probably have a tough time getting into the playoffs, in my opinion. But as we know, this league can be hard to predict at times, and maybe they'll surprise me and do a little bit better. But regardless of how we look at things, the fact that Boqvist was given a contract extension, makes $2.6 million, was drafted with a lot of potential, a lot of upside, and I still think that it's quite likely he could find his game and get it together. Maybe it's not the best system for him. I don't know. Maybe he needs a fresh start. Hard to say. Of course, he was a big piece that came over in the Seth Jones trade when he was traded to Chicago a while back. So obviously, he was drafted with a lot of potential, spent some time playing in Sweden, came over to the Blackhawks, got dealt to Columbus. We'll see. I'm not saying for sure that he's going to be a piece that moves out, but regardless, I think Columbus would like to find a better, more consistent partner to play on that top pair with Werenski. If Boqvist isn't that guy, I wonder, do they play him lower in the lineup, or do they consider using him as the trade piece that goes out to possibly find another defenseman to come in? We'll have to watch that situation as well. Hard to say. exactly how they go about things. In Vancouver, Darren Dreger's reporting that the Canucks have reportedly been linked to Ducks defenseman John Klingberg. Of course, we know he was a UFA this past offseason, and his opportunity to find a new contract was really odd. Ended up firing his agent. It just did not go as well as anybody thought it would, including himself. I'm sure he had big aspirations of likely getting a 7-year deal, knowing that he was most likely not going back to the Dallas Stars because they just couldn't afford to give him anywhere near what he was looking to get paid, and of course what he really was valued at, which is fair. But of course they had spent a lot of other money on the rest of their blue line and just didn't leave enough there for a Klingberg new deal. It's just that simple. Everybody kind of seen it coming for quite some time. So certainly I think he had desires to stay, but it didn't work out. Ends up going to the Anaheim Ducks on a 1-year deal. So far this season, the Ducks don't look good. I never really suspected they would be a playoff team anyway. So I guess, myself, I thought it was a real possibility. Klingberg very well could be, no guarantees, of course, very well could be one of the top names available at the NHL trade deadline. It was rumored last year Dallas might move him, but once they were trending towards making the playoffs, they kind of decided, we'll kind of use him as our own rental, take our chances. We'll make a stab at re-signing him in the offseason, even though we know the odds are probably slim based on what he could get paid elsewhere. But at the end of the day, things didn't work out. Now he's in Anaheim, and the Ducks are off to a bad start. So Vancouver, which we know desperately needs to shake up that blue line. To me, it's the biggest reason why they're 5 games into the season without a victory. I hope they get things turned around, but they don't have a lot of good right side options, in my opinion. Tyler Myers, Tucker Poolman, it's a very underwhelming blue line in Vancouver, especially on the right side. So we'll have to see how things go here. I don't know. The problem here, too, is going to be how they're going to afford this contract. Now, if the Canucks are trending towards the playoffs, which is going to be challenging at this point, and the Ducks are not, maybe we see a trade. But if that kind of trade was going to happen, I don't see it as being a deadline deal. I think we're going to probably see, unless we see a drastic turnaround like ASAP, we're going to see Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford likely make some deals sooner than later. Now, I don't know that the Ducks would want to move Klingberg that quickly, though. So it's going to be tricky. Even though the Canucks would have interest, I just don't know that it would be something we see that soon. But if the Vancouver Canucks can get themselves back into the playoff race, then maybe it's somebody they target later into the season. I can see Klingberg being a good fit there longer term, to be honest, but the hard part here is going to be that the fact that they're just in a real bad cap situation. The previous regime in Vancouver absolutely butchered their salary cap, in my opinion, and they're having a tough time with the new guys. That's why it looks like they're not really doing anything, but a lot of it is tough to do with asking prices high to pay other teams to take on your bad contract. So we'll see where things go, but eventually Vancouver might have their eyes on the Ducks defenseman. And Craig Button is suggesting that the Pittsburgh Penguins might be a great fit and a good landing spot for Patrick Kane later into the season as the NHL trade deadline gets closer. Of course, Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews in Chicago, very likely expected to be traded. Of course, they do have full control. It'd be their own decisions. They have a full no-move clause. They could choose to not be dealt. They can go anywhere as they like, basically. So I don't expect big returns from them, to be honest, because when teams players call their shots like that and they only want certain teams, it kind of gives all the leverage to the team that they're going to, not to the team that they're leaving. So I don't, expect there to be anything too crazy going back to Chicago. However, Pittsburgh would make a lot of sense. We know that they recently loaded up on their old core of players. Crosby is, of course, still well under contract, but they re-signed Malkin, they re-signed Letang, they brought back Brian Rust. This core group of guys that have been together some time want to win together again, and they want to make another push here. So it wouldn't be surprising at all to see an aggressive Penguins management group go after a top guy like Kane near the deadline. Now, if you can remember, some people are probably watching, then listen to hear me say that and say, well, how could they ever afford a $10 million player? Well, think about it. Teams can retain up to 50%. So Chicago keeps half the salary, knocks it down to over $5 million. Maybe they have a player go out off the Penguins roster to even out the money. Maybe they trade a guy like a Jason Zucker, for example. He's doing a little bit better this year, but he would be nowhere near Patrick Kane's level. Kane would be a huge upgrade to play with Evgeny Malkin on that second line. So you never know, right? It's hard to say where things go. I think they could make it work, no problem. It's just a matter of the agreed upon asking price. And I can just imagine what Patrick Kane would look like and the damage he could do in a Penguin uniform. I mean, there's been lots of teams. There's probably going to be lots of Kane talk throughout the year. I know the Rangers are an interesting team to think about in that respect. Reuniting with his old buddy Artemi Panarin. I think the Avalanche, who I just talked about, are definitely going to be wanting to go for it again, assuming they'll be in the hunt. A team like Calgary is expected to be doing better this year. And there's some other teams in the East you could look to as well. So there won't be any shortage of interest. It's going to really boil down to where Kane thinks he has the best chance to go and what's best for him. So we'll see what kind of decisions we get. But certainly the thought of him going to Pittsburgh and teaming up with like Crosby and Malkin, etc., in that top six is pretty crazy to think about. So let me know your thoughts on what you think of all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.